Everyone, happy Monday. I hope that you had a wonderful Easter weekend if you celebrate. And I hope that this week finds you ready, geared up for starting another week of learning at home. Mrs. Wall and I have worked together to put together a series of instructional videos for you so that we can better support you in your learning at home. We have put together these lessons for you to watch as well as other activities for you to complete throughout the week. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're watching these videos, most importantly, is that you can pause it at any time. And a really nice feature is that if you ever need to go back and hear something again, you want to see us go over an example again, you can go back and rewatch the video. So, we are going to start today with our first lesson, and that is going to be parts of a circle, which is lesson 7.1. And we have two outcomes for today. So, the first thing that we want to be able to do by the end of the video is to identify the different parts of a circle. Once we've done that, then we are going to talk a little bit about how we can determine the radius and the diameter of a circle. This might be review for some of you, and for others of you, it might be new learning. So, again, if you need to hear something a second time or you need to see an example again, you can rewind the video and watch that before answering any of the questions. For today's lesson, you are going to need something to write with and then a piece of some kind of paper that you can either take some notes on if you'd like or work out some of the example problems. You're also going to want to make sure that you have a calculator. Now, your phone has a basic calculator on it, but that's not going to be helpful for us when we're working with circles. So, therefore, you're either going to want to use the virtual calculator that we provided for you, or if you have your own calculator that you've brought home with you, that would be um, useful as well. Okay. Throughout the video will pause and you will be prompted to answer some questions. Make sure that you try your best to answer those questions because that is going to be our way of checking in with you and making sure that you understand what it is that we are learning that day. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I want to take a look at are the parts of a circle. So the parts of a circle that you need to know. So first we have the radius. The radius is the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle. So if this was our center of the circle right here, the radius would be the distance from this center straight out. I know that line doesn't look straight, but bear with me. It should be a straight line out to any point on the circle. So that is one measure that would be considered a radius. You could take the radius in any direction. So this would also be a radius. It doesn't matter where the radius is on the circle. So again, the radius is from that center point out to any point on the circle. The next part of the circle that I want to talk about is the diameter. So the diameter of the circle is the distance all the way across the circle through the center. So instead of going halfway, the diameter goes from one side of the circle to the other and is a straight line right through the center. So you can tell by looking at this that the radius here is half the size of the diameter completely across. And that's going to be important in the next part of the lesson. The next measurement I want to talk to you a little bit about is the circumference. Now, typically when we talk about shapes and we're measuring the distance around the outside of a shape, we call that perimeter. A circle is a pretty particular shape. So when we're talking about its perimeter, it's got a special name, and that special name is the circumference. So the circumference is the distance around the outside of the circle. So if I were to measure, if I had a tool that would allow me to accurately measure around this circular area, again, bear with me because I'm using a mouse. The distance around this circle would be the circumference. The last thing I want to talk about isn't necessarily a part of a circle, but it's something that we're really going to be talking a lot about as we do some calculations with measurements of circles. And that is this term pi. And this is pi, P-I, not like the kind of pie that you might have had on Easter, but it's a really, really special number. And here's why. Pi is really, if I take the circumference, you read that? Circumference of a circle, any circle in the world. If it's an actual circle, and I take its circumference, the distance around the outside, and I divide that by the diameter. Need to get a touch screen. Any circle in the world, if I take the circumference and I divide it by the diameter, it's going to give me a number 3.14159, and on and on and on and on forever. That calculation is so particular that it's got a special name, and it's called pi. So now you can see this number is a little wonky, 3.14159. There are people, if you want something to do later, you could look up all of the digits in pi. It's an irrational number. It goes on forever. So since we can't calculate with a number that goes on forever, we either use the calculator key that has this pi symbol on it, and that is a Greek symbol that stands for pi, or we round this number and we use the easier version, 3.14. So that's my quick little spiel on pi, and you'll see how important that is in the next couple of lessons, but it's a really special number. Any circle in the world, if you divide the circumference by the diameter, you'll get that number. You will get pi. So that being said, let's move on to the next part of our lesson. So why do we need to know these parts of the circle? Well, in order to do anything with a circle, the radius and the diameter are really important. So we're going to talk about how we can use those two things to figure out different measurements. So take a look at this circle. The question says the radius of the circle is 4 meters. What is the diameter? So I know that this radius is 4, and it wants me to figure out what the diameter is. Well, I know that the diameter goes all the way across the circle. So if this distance here is 4, then this distance here has to be 4, which would make the distance across this entire circle a total of 8. So the diameter here would be 8 meters. Let's take a look at a different example. The diameter of a circle is 18 centimeters. What is the radius? So this time we've been given the diameter of a circle and we're told that it's 18 centimeters. Well, if the distance across the entire circle is 18, then I need to figure out what would be half of that. Half of 18 is 9. And if I wanted to write that down, I would just show 18 divided by 2. So the radius of this circle would be 9. Let's try a couple together. Take a look at this one. The diameter of a circle is 25 inches. What is the radius? So this distance, the diameter, see, that's why it's important that I know which one is which. The diameter is 25. What is the radius? Well, if all the way across is 25, I need to figure out what half of that would be. And half of 25 would be 12.5. So the radius would be 12.5 inches. Okay, let's try one more. The radius of a circle is 16 millimeters. What is the diameter? So the radius is 16, and it wants to know what would be the total diameter. Go ahead and pause the video and see what you come up with. Good. So if the radius is 16, this side would also be 16, which would mean that the total distance across would be 32. I feel like my mouse is getting worse as I go. Okay. All right. So here's one I want you to try on your own. The radius of a circle is 14 inches. What is the diameter? Your answer should have been double 14. So if the radius was 28, or if the radius was 14, then the diameter would be 28 inches. Last one. The diameter of a circle is 44 inches. What is the radius? So if the diameter is 44, the radius is half of that, which would make it 22 inches. All right. I hope that you did okay on the questions. Mrs. Wall and I will be providing you with feedback on how you did. Um, and if there are any questions that you have, remember that you can always reach out to us. Make sure that you're checking the calendar every day for upcoming assignments that are due and live virtual Zoom meetings or opportunities to play online games with the rest of our 7th grade math students. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.